French lawmakers have passed a bill that allows the police to spy on French citizens by hacking their phones and turning on GPS, a microphone, camera. It's been compared to, the Patriot Act in the US and similar laws that you have in the UK and in Europe. But I mean, the fact that everyone is distracted now in France by the riots, by the protests, by the killing of Naël by the police, they've been very lucky, Macron's government, because, like I said, everyone's distracted and not paying attention, and now they've got this bill through. And I've been, researching this and compiling all this information. I put a thread on Twitter, and I want to walk you through this and how insane this law is. It's completely out of control. Completely out of control. So it's particularly Article 3 under this justice reform. Okay, and so here's my thread that I put on Twitter. The bill passed with 80 votes in favor and 24 against. So you can take a guess who voted against it. It was, of course, the left. Okay, so you have a coalition called NUPES, NUPES, and you have the French party, La France Insoumise, LFI or LFI. They're the ones who said, "What the hell are you guys doing? This is an authoritarian's snooper's charter. It's out of control. This is unnecessary. It does not work, and it's a violation of people's privacy." And the people who voted for it are, of course, Macron, right, and his party, and so alongside him, Marine Le Pen's party, Rassemblement National, right? So the far right, center right, and the center, they love this thing. As a matter of fact, it's Macron's own justice minister. He is the one who introduced this bill. Okay, so now, as I said, the police, they can track someone's location in real time, and they can turn on cameras and microphones to record conversations. On paper, they say that this has to be approved by a judge or a magistrate, and it's valid for just 15 days, but it can be renewed for another 15 days. And after that, you can renew it for 2 months at a time, up to 6 months in total. Okay, so you can survey a target for 6 months in total. Now, this is aimed at people who are suspected of terrorism or organized crime, right? So you gotta love it. Terrorism. You guys know that the Terrorism Act in the UK, okay, or the Patriot Act in the United States, these things are notorious for having been abused against the general population, right? So they're not actually going to fight terrorism with this. They're going to use it to attack who knows who, God knows who. And then it'll come out in a few years that actually they've been spying on everybody. Just the same thing like with Snowden, GCHQ in England, which is the NSA equivalent, spying on everybody. Helping the NSA in America to spy on everybody, spy on the entire population and the whole world. So when you hear anti-terrorism or, fighting organized crime, well, what does that even mean? So under the law, French police can spy on a target suspected of committing a crime punishable by at least 5 years in prison. Okay, so that's the threshold. The target, whoever you're spying on, the crime that you suspect them of committing, it has to carry a penalty of minimum 5 years in jail. Now, they tried introducing an amendment in the Senate. So in France, they have the National Assembly, and then it goes to the Senate, and then back down to the National Assembly. So in the Senate, they said, no, let's raise it to 10 years. So you can only spy on someone if they're committing a much more serious crime, something that is minimum 10 years in prison, not 5. And then this amendment didn't make it in the end. It was kept at 5. Now, the Justice Minister, Éric Dupond-Moretti, there's his name, he claims, and of course he's gonna exaggerate and lie in his favor because it's his bill. He claims that it's just going to be a few dozen cases per year. Scout's honor, cross my heart and hope to die. I don't know why I did a V sign. Yeah, he claims it's just a few dozen cases per year, we promise. And then he says, this is very different from totalitarianism, and it's not George Orwell's 1984. Okay, so whenever somebody says, this is not 1984, I can guarantee you it's 1984, and probably worse. And it is. So he was complaining, he was complaining that it's too risky and it's unreliable to bug somebody's apartment, the old-fashioned way where you break in, you put some bugs in the lamps, in a lampshade, or in the old school fixed lines. It's too messy. And he said, why should we deprive ourselves of these new technologies? He sounds like Boromir, right? He sounds like Boromir in Lord of the Rings when he sees the ring in Rivendell, and he's like, why shouldn't we use it? Let us use Sauron's ring against him. That's what this guy sounds like, So the point is that they haven't even had time to debate this thing, right? And just to be clear, this was not introduced after the riots started. But my point still stands that most people in France have no clue about this. No clue. They're distracted by the protests, by the riots. And now was, the perfect time to just kind of rush this thing through and get it over with. So they've had barely any time to debate this. And because of the riots, the parliamentary sessions are shortened, right? Because every representative has to go scramble back to their constituency. They're running around the country. They're even busier than they were before. So, very convenient. And of course, the right in France, the right wing, they say that, well, look at the protests, look at these savages, what they're doing to the country. Oh, this is proof that we need the spying bill. Okay, I mean, burning a trash can is not exactly organized crime or terrorism. Stealing cheese or a can of Red Bull, not really terrorism, is it? But okay, you do your thing. So, I noted here that the terrorists who carried out the 2015 Paris attacks, guess what? They didn't use any special devices or sophisticated means to communicate. They used SMS, just regular SMS, text messages, right? And these things are notorious for being insecure, unencrypted. Anybody can intercept them. I mean, you have to understand the police have something called a Stingray, right? It fits in a suitcase. They can park outside, open this thing up, and this Stingray pretends to be a cell phone tower. And then, your phone just locks onto it and thinks it's a cell phone tower. And then they can listen to your calls. They can see who you're calling, when you called them. They can read the text messages, everything, right? So they already have the technology to survey the likes of the terrorists who carried out, one of the worst terrorist attacks in French history. So that shows you that, all these lies and pretexts and excuses that they offer you that, we need this spy bill to fight terrorists. If we don't do this, if we can't turn on your microphones, they're going to fly a baguette through the Eiffel Tower. This is insane. This is a lie and it's ridiculous. They do not need these things. This does nothing but invade people's privacy. Okay? This goes without saying also, but others have pointed out that guess what? More wary terrorists or hardened criminals and gangs probably not even using cell phones or devices that have microphones and cameras in the first place. So what exactly do you gain from this, right? Keep in mind, in case this wasn't clear enough, this is not just about phones. This is every single electronic device, right? They can hack your goddamn car if they want. The car, right? Your tablet, phone, computer, everything, right? There was one amendment that did succeed, and it added doctors and journalists to the list of protected professions that cannot be spied on, okay? So there's a clause in this bill that says the police are not allowed to spy on lawyers, on judges, on lawmakers, and then they added doctors and journalists, which sounds great, right? Which sounds great. Now, here's the thing. The left tried introducing another amendment that adds journalists who don't hold press cards. Not every journalist necessarily has a press card, right? So, because that they're going to try and screw this, right? You know that they were going to spy on a journalist and say, well, he didn't have a press card, so, fair game. I doubt they're going to follow any of this, right? I guarantee you, I bet you anything you like in a few years, there's going to be a scandal because it turns out the police were spying on a judge, and they were spying on a lawyer, and they were spying on an MP, they were spying on a journalist, and every single profession on this list, they will spy on them. There's nobody to monitor and verify any of this anyway. Who polices the police? L'IGPN, right? L'Inspecteur Général de la Police Nationale. They usually side with the police, by the way. And also, keep in mind that these things can be classified. So, once again, if you don't have the necessary clearance, there's no guarantee of oversight in any way whatsoever. So, it sounds nice on paper. Oh, fighting terrorists. Oh. Yeah, and how do we make sure that you're actually fighting terrorists? Just to give you a recent example, right? Because the law might say something nice, but that doesn't mean that it's actually applied. The most recent example, the riots. Why are people rioting in France? People are rioting because the police lied. The police claimed the police hid behind a 2017 law that allows them to kill people who refuse to comply and pose a threat to the police and to others around them. They claimed that Naël tried to ram them with a car, and they got away with it. And then when the video came out contradicting the police's statement, then people started rioting because the police lied and did not apply the law. So you have no guarantee, right before your eyes, there's an example of this. You have no guarantee that the French police are going to apply the law, even if it says, it says something nice. No guarantee whatsoever. So this raises the question, how will the police be able to remotely turn on someone's microphone, camera, and GPS, right? Because the way that they word it makes it sound like, they have the power to do this already, and it just takes a flick of a switch. Yeah, they do. They do. And the first way that they're going to do this, they will exploit 0 days. So a 0 day is, a 0 day, it basically means any security vulnerability in a device, in a piece of software or an app that hasn't been discovered nor patched or fixed, right? So, there might be a security vulnerability on an iPhone that even people at Apple don't know about, but as an intelligence agency or somebody else discovers this vulnerability and they exploit it. Okay, so that's the general definition. Okay, so this is the first way that they will do this, and we know from Vault 7, that the CIA hoard 0 days. That means that they spend the entire day looking for errors, looking for mistakes, looking for bad code, looking for any hole, right, that already exists in a piece of software or in a piece of hardware, and then they just they use it whenever they want, and the user and the manufacturer are none the wiser. They have hundreds of these things, right? So that's the first way. The second way, Pegasus. I guarantee you, once again, the French police, if they haven't already bought Pegasus, and I would be surprised, they will get this and they will use it to spy on people. Okay, Pegasus is again, just to remind you, is a it's a cyber weapon. It's a cyber weapon. It's a tool that hacks mobile phones, notably iPhones and iOS, and it's manufactured by NSO Group, which is an Israeli company in Israel, and I've done videos about this before, so please feel free to check them out. Just briefly, there's a pipeline in Israel between Unit 8200, or if you will, the Israeli military, and the private sector. So you have people who leave the Israeli army and go to start up these companies that export cyber weapons like Pegasus. And of course, you have to understand something that this is a way for Israel to make money, but it still has the possibility to distance itself in case anything goes wrong, as we saw, right? So Jamal Khashoggi, who's a journalist who worked at the Washington Post, he was killed in part because of Pegasus. The Saudis bought this tool and they used it to track his movements and his location in real time, and they killed him, right? So another, one of Gonzalo Boye, the lawyer that I interviewed just a few weeks ago. Guess what? There's a scandal in Spain last year that it turns out his iPhone was hacked, and a bunch of other judges and lawyers in Spain had their iPhones hacked with Pegasus, right? So this is a notorious tool that is, we only hear about Pegasus being used against journalists and MPs and lawmakers. And it's also marketed originally as an anti-terrorism gadget. Okay, so Israel and NSO groups say we only allow exports of this cyber weapon for other countries and states so they can combat organized crime and terrorism. But the only thing we actually see in reality is that they don't use this against terrorists or criminals. They use it against journalists, MPs, lawyers, judges, etc. That's the truth. So I guarantee you the French are going to buy this tool and they will abuse it just in the same way that it has been abused around the world in Mexico and Spain by the Saudis. This is a very, very serious thing. And there's an entire domain and sector of cyber weaponry, okay, electronic warfare. Although, again, I don't think we should... remember, electronic warfare can also refer to jamming systems in a battlefield. So, I don't want to conflate the two, but they are related. And this is an entire domain that people don't even see because you can't really visualize it, but it's there and it's happening. Okay, so don't believe them. I don't believe them for 1 second that they are going to abide by the law. And this is an insanely disgusting piece of legislation. The idea that, you're just supposed to blindly trust the French government to use this responsibly, when you can see in front of you right now the police abusing their power, abusing their authority to whack people, quite literally, and in the mob sense of the term with Nael, they actually whacked him and killed him. And when you have a precedent in Britain, you have a precedent in the United States of governments passing legislation like this, and in the end, they don't use it to fight terrorists. Terrorists don't even use devices that necessarily have microphones, cameras, or GPS. They use unencrypted means sometimes to communicate, which they can already hack easily and intercept easily. So they don't even need these laws, but they pass them anyway. They exploit the fear that has been instilled in the population, in the wake of 9/11. Perfect timing to pass the Patriot Act. And of course, George Bush and I should say Dick Cheney, and his lawyer David Addington, in secret, not even 24 hours after the towers came down, they passed the presidential surveillance program, which then became the NSA mass surveillance that you've all heard of from Greenwald and Snowden in 2013, right? That was the precursor. So again, you have over and over and over and over cases of governments abusing anti-terrorism tools and laws to hurt people who are not terrorists, who are not engaged in organized crime, and who are journalists, lawyers, etc., and just the general population. Everybody. So this is scandalous. And once again, I go back to what I said a few moments ago. The French and their image of, it's the country of, les droits de l'homme et du citoyen, right? Country of human rights, the citizens' rights, right? The country of enlightenment. There's nothing enlightened about this. It's actually very medieval. It's very, very draconian. It's completely, it's something, you would see in 1984 and then some. 1984 and then some. Make no mistake about it. This is scandalous. I've read the law and there is no way you can look at this and find anything nice in it. And by the way, this is just Article 3 of the entire reform. Just in case you didn't know, the Justice Minister, right, who, by the way, he said that in the light of these riots, he wants a swift and harsh and systematic response, to punish people, and that's happening, right? As we looked at with these ridiculous, absurd, obscene sentences that are really something out of the Middle Ages. He is also asking for 10,000 extra recruits. So 1,250 of those will be for the Ministry of Justice, and the rest of them police. And he also wants to raise the annual budget from 9.6 billion to 11 billion. he's really getting a lot, right? He's getting everything he wants. And surprise, surprise, Macron, Le Pen, no difference between them. The only people who had guts, the only people who have brains and who had the spine to stand up to this are the left, the real left. You know, in France, you have an actual left, a traditional left, Mélenchon, France Insoumise, NUPES, and so on. The only ones, right? I think you had only one single person from Macron's party that objected to this, but you know, the overwhelming majority of the center and the right voted for this, which really says, it tells you everything you need to know. France has officially become a police state. It was already a police state, but in case you had any, you know, you had any doubts or misconception about what's happening, it's a police state. It's official. It's a police state.